Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Fundamental Rights Part 1, Polity, Lesson number 5. So let's get started with fundamental rights. Articles 12 to 35 of Indian Constitution deals with fundamental rights, and the Constitution says these rights are inviolable, which means these are your rights given by the Constitution and nobody can violate these rights. Now, there are 6 fundamental rights conferred upon an Indian citizen. First, right to equality. Articles 14 to 18 talk about right to equality. Articles 19 to 22 talks about right to freedom. Article 23 and 24 talks about right against exploitation. Right to freedom of religion. Article 25 to 28. Article 29 to 30 talks about cultural and educational rights. And finally, Article 32 talks about right to constitutional remedies. अब सिर्फ बेसिक इन्फॉर्मेशन इज़ नॉट सफिशिएंट फॉर यूपीएससी सिविल सर्विस एग्जामिनेशन, सो वी आर गोइंग टू गो इन डिटेल. इसीलिए आई हैव डिवाइडेड दिस लेसन इन 2 parts. There was one more fundamental right called right to property, which was later repealed by 44th Constitutional Amendment Act. Every single word of the lesson is important and इतना ही याद रखना है, that is sufficient for the exam. First, right to equality. We are going to discuss Articles 14 to 18 in detail. So, right to equality guarantees equal rights for everyone, irrespective of religion, gender, caste, race, or place of birth. It ensures equal opportunities for employment in government services and ensures against discrimination by state in matters of employment on the basis of caste, religion, etc. This right also includes abolition of titles as well as untouchability. So here is a table giving you brief information about each article. So PDF it will become very easy for you to revise later on. Now let's go in the details. The first one, equality before law, Article 14. Article 14 treats all people same in the eyes of law, be it a normal citizen like us or the Prime Minister. This provision states that all citizens will be treated equally before the law. The law of the country protects everybody equally. Under the same circumstances, the law will treat people in the same manner. So it doesn't matter if you're a common man or a celebrity or a very powerful personality or a man or woman. In eyes of law, everybody is equal. Now let's talk about Article 15, Prohibition of Discrimination. No citizens shall on the ground only of race, religion, caste, place of birth, sex, or any of them be subject to any sort of discrimination with respect to the following: access to public places, use of tanks, wells, ghats that are maintained by the state or that are meant for general public. This article also mentions that special provision can be made for women, children, and backward classes. When this article was framed, you can clearly understand that untouchability बहुत ज़्यादा prevalent था उस वक्त when we had very early on gotten our independence, and इसीलिए ये article include करना ज़रूरी था ताकि nobody is mistreated. Now let's talk about Article 16, Equality of Opportunity in Matters of Public Employment. Article 16 provides equal employment opportunities in state services for all citizens. Now there are certain states जिन्होंने कुछ seats reserve करके रखे हैं for the state people, like the youths of the state can get more employment. इसीलिए उन्होंने ऐसे provisions लाए हैं. जैसे just recently in current affairs के video में we learned how Haryana has brought in the same kind of legislation कि पहले हरियाणवीज को जो locals हैं उनको job opportunities मिलनी चाहिए. No, but this article is making sure कि जो दूसरे स्टेट से माइग्रेट करके जा रहे हैं उस पर्टिकुलर स्टेट में जहाँ ऐसे लेजिस्लेशंस हैं उनके साथ कोई नाइंसाफ़ी ना, उन्हें भी जॉब अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ मिले. भले उनको पहला प्रेफरेंस ना दिया जाए बिकॉज ऑफ सच लेजिस्लेशन, पर उन्हें भी जॉब मिलनी चाहिए, राइट? Therefore, this article states that no citizen shall be discriminated against in matters of public employment or appointment on the grounds of race, religion, caste, sex, place of birth, descent, or residence. Now, Article 17 talks about abolition of untouchability. It prohibits the practice of untouchability. Untouchability is abolished in all forms. Any disability arising out of untouchability is made an offence. Article 18 is about abolition of titles. So, the state shall not confer any titles except those which are academic or military titles. So, the article also prohibits citizens of India from accepting any titles from foreign state. So, earlier Britishers used to give titles like Rai Bahadur, Khan Bahadur, all those things are now prohibited. Now, awards like Padma Shri, Padma Bhushan, And military honors like Ashok Chakra, Paramveer Chakra do not belong to this category. So we can address a person like this is Padma Bhushan so and so. That is okay. Now coming to the next right to freedom, we'll discuss Articles 19 to 22. So freedom is one of the most important ideals cherished by any democratic society. Right to freedom includes rights such as freedom of speech, expression, assembly without arms, freedom of association, freedom to practice any profession, and freedom to reside in any part of the country. In the last lesson of preamble, we discussed how we are given freedom, okay? And we are guaranteed freedom of speech and expression, so we can voice our opinions. But हर चीज़ की एक limit होती है. It should not be a hate speech, right? It should not be endangering the integrity, security, and sovereignty of our country. Also, in order to maintain friendly relations with foreign nations for public order, with respect to defamation, freedom of speech, even though guaranteed, can be punishable if one is crossing their limits and breaking rules. Freedom to assemble. The state guarantees every person the freedom to assemble peacefully without arms. However, as above, reasonable restrictions can be imposed in interest of the sovereignty and integrity of the country and public order. Next, freedom to form associations, unions, or cooperative societies. Again, state can impose restrictions on the grounds that we have already discussed. This freedom gives workers the rights to form trade unions, which is thus a fundamental right. The police forces and armed forces, intelligence bureau persons employed with telecommunication systems are not allowed to form unions. They cannot have a union or an association. So remember these two very important points. Freedom to move freely. So a citizen of India can move freely throughout the territory of India, but this right can also be restricted on the grounds of security, public order, and protecting the interest of scheduled tribes. Next, freedom of residence. Citizens of India have the right to reside in any part of the country, although restrictions can be imposed again on the grounds of security, public order, or for protecting the interest of scheduled tribes. You cannot move into certain territories जहाँ पे tribal areas हैं, वहाँ पे restrictions place किए गए हैं for the security of the tribals, and also they don't want any outsider to come in their territory. So for your safety as well. Next, freedom of profession. All citizens have the right to carry on any trade or profession or occupation provided the trade or occupation is not illegal or immoral. Also, the law does not prevent the states from making laws related to technical or professional qualifications required for practicing the occupation or trade. So for practicing as a doctor, you obviously need a degree. Now coming to Article 20, it deals with the protection of citizens in respect of conviction for offences. बहुत important है, prelims में काफ़ी बार इस पे question आ चुका है. This provides for 3 types of protection of the individual against the state. Now let's talk about retrospective criminal legislation, the first type of protection. So under this होता ये कि for instance एक इंसान ने 1990 में कोई crime किया and 1990 में कोई rule या law नहीं था declaring that particular act as crime. ठीक है, उसको क्राइम नहीं माना जाता था उस समय, लेकिन बाद में एक रूल बना 1992 में फॉर इंस्टेंस कि भाई अब उस तरह के एक्शन को क्रिमिनल ऑफेंस माना जाएगा, तो फिर आप जाके 1990 में किए हुए क्राइम के लिए उस आदमी को जाके अरेस्ट नहीं कर सकते. Secondly, the law also provides that a person cannot be subject to a punishment greater than what is prescribed by law for the offense committed. Next, double jeopardy. This indicates that a person cannot be convicted for the same offense more than once. And finally, prohibition against self-incrimination. This implies that no person accused of an offense shall be compelled by the state to bear witness against himself. उसको force नहीं किया जा सकता है कि तुम ये crime accept कर लो कि तुम ही नहीं किया है. Article 21. It states that no person shall be deprived of his life and personal liberty by the state except as per the procedure established by law. The Supreme Court has interpreted the right to life as the right to a dignified life. This is the most important right in one sense because without this right to life, all other fundamental rights would be meaningless. So this is the reason Article 21 is so important. It is this article that differentiates between a police state and a constitutional state. Article 21A. This article was introduced by the 86th Constitutional Amendment in 2002. It provides that the state shall provide free and compulsory education to all children between the ages of 6 and 14. Now, talking about Article 22, it deals with the protection against arrest and detention in certain cases. Now, this article is applicable to both citizens and non-citizens who are foreigners, NRIs, उनको भी ये right मिलता है. Now, this provision extends certain procedural safeguards for citizens in case of an arrest. It comes into picture after a person has been arrested. It is not fundamental right against detention and arrest. तो arrest होने के बाद के ये rights है कि you can give them an option to call a lawyer. Right, so the idea behind this right is to prevent arbitrary false arrests. Article 22, Subclass 1. Any person who is in custody has to be informed as why he has been arrested. Further, he cannot be denied the right to consult an advocate, as I've already explained that. Article 22, Subclass 2. The arrested individual should be produced before a judicial magistrate within 24 hours of his arrest. Article 22, Subclause 3. No individual who has been arrested can be kept in custody for more than the period determined by the judicial magistrate. Now, we know that this right is for both citizens and non-citizens, but there are two exceptions. These safeguards are not applicable to enemy aliens. Enemy aliens are those people who belong to the country जिसके साथ हमारे रिश्ते ठीक नहीं हैं. People arrested under Preventive Detention law. Now, let's understand what is preventive detention. There are two types of detention, punitive and preventive. Punitive detention is a detention after a trial. Okay? Preventive detention is detention without a trial. The idea behind this is to prevent an individual from committing a crime. This means that persons can be detained on the ground of suspicion. किसी पे शक है. For instance, हमें लगता है कि that this particular person is planning some dangerous activity, for instance, some terror attack. तो हम उसे उस सस्पेशन पे अरेस्ट कर सकते हैं. सो ऐसे लोग जिनका अरेस्ट सस्पेशन के बेसिस पे होता है उनके भी राइट्स का ध्यान रखा गया है एंड दे आर गवर्न्ड बाय प्रिवेंटिव डिटेंशन लॉज. Now let's talk about right against exploitation, Article 23 and 24. So this right implies the prohibition of trafficking in human beings and other forms of forced labor. It also implies the prohibition of children working in factories, etc. The Constitution prohibits the employment of children under 14 years in hazardous conditions. Article 23, prohibition of trafficking in human beings and forced labor. So Article 23, Subclause 1 makes such kind of activities a criminal offence. Article 23, Subclause 2. Nothing in this article shall prevent the state from imposing compulsory service for public purposes, and in imposing such service, the state shall not make any discrimination on grounds only of religion, race, caste, or class, or any of them. Now, exploitation implies the misuse of other services by force or by labor without payment. So, किसी से काम करवा लिया उसको उसके पैसे नहीं दिए, that is also exploitation. There were many marginalized communities in India who were forced to engage in manual and agricultural labor without any payment. Labor without payment is known as begar. Article 23 forbids any form of exploitation. Also, one cannot be forced to engage in labor against his or her will, even if remuneration is offered. Forced labor is forbidden by the Constitution. This article has also made bonded labor unconstitutional. Bonded labor का मतलब होता है when a person is forced to offer services out of a loan or debt which they could not repay. Article 24, prohibition of employment of children in factories. So this article says that no child below the age of 14 years shall be employed to work in any factory or mine or engaged in any other hazardous employment. However, the employment of children in non-hazardous work is allowed. Now let's discuss right to freedom of religion, Articles 25 to 28. So this indicates the secular nature of Indian polity. There is equal respect given to all religions. There is freedom of conscience, profession, practice, and propagation of religion. The state has no official religion. Every person has the right to freely practice his or her faith, establish and maintain religious and charitable institutions. Since the lesson has crossed 12 minutes timeline, I am going to take all these articles, Article 25 to 28 and the remaining parts in the next lesson. Thank you so much for watching the video. Don't forget the slogan, you can do it. We can achieve whatever we want. Do not forget to like, share, comment, and please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'll see you in the next one.